This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 131. We're talking about procrastination. I'm in the middle of a huge book project, and this is a subject that I know all too well. Laurel's going to hold my feet to the fire on this episode. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
You a doppelganger?
What?
You know, like somebody who looks like you?
Oh. I was walking down Vanderbilt's campus where I went to college, and I saw this girl coming up the sidewalk towards me, and I was like, I recognize that girl. Who is that? And I was like, oh, it looks like me. Like, I thought I saw me walking up.
Yeah.
It was bizarre.
You and all those Vanderbilt girls look just alike.
We're all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think I do, besides that one girl.
So check this out. Not really a doppelganger, but there is a minister with the name David Hooper. And every Monday, I get these messages on Twitter because my username is @DavidHooper. Oh, man, David Hooper was preaching up a storm yesterday. David Hooper was laying it down for the Lord. I'm like, what? I thought they were talking about a public speaking engagement that I had done, right? And it turns out it's the minister, David Hooper.
So somebody that looks like you on Twitter. What
Yeah,
would
but
that be
that's happened
called?
before.
That's not a doppelganger. That's like a doppel...
That's
what do
like
they call
an
it?
alias, a doppel alias.
A doppel alias.
I don't know. It still counts, right?
Maybe. Do you look like anyone?
You know, when I had long hair, people used to say that I looked like the drummer in Nirvana, who's now the singer in Foo Fighters.
Oh, wow.
Which I guess he's a rock star. I guess that's a good thing.
How long was your hair, David?
It was down to my chest, mid-chest. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. It's the podcast for authors, speakers, and coaches. We'll help you expand your influence, reach more people with your message, and make more money doing what you love. Even there are many people with the same name and look that you have. We're going to show you how to build a successful personality-based business and live life on your terms. On this episode, we're talking about procrastination, which I've been thinking a lot about because I'm working on this book.
You are actually an expert in procrastination.
We can talk a lot about this.
An expert. We should be interviewing you for this show.
You want to?
We can. Yeah. We can make David the expert for procrastination.
I think the first step, it's not unlike the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous. You have to recognize that you've got a problem.
How do you do that?
One of the ways I'm doing it right now is with a program called Rescue Time. And I used this about 5 years ago, found it very helpful, and it's time to bring Rescue Time back, which is basically a time bank. Have you ever done a time bank?
I have not.
Used to do those via paper. And what you do is every 15 minutes you would write down what you're doing. You do it for 7 days, so you get the entire weekend. You tally it up. Like I was on Facebook here, I'm doing email here, I'm driving here. And then you get to know where your time is going. But with Rescue Time, if you're on the computer, it does everything automatically.
Ah.
It's going to tally everything up at the end of the week, end of the month, whatever the length I choose. It's going to say, yep, you were spending like 800 hours on Facebook. You're on YouTube watching a bunch of cat videos. It knows everything. It's a little bit scary.
So when you used it years ago, what did you learn? What did you gather from that information? And did it help you make any changes with the procrastination?
It does help you to become more aware. And I think that is the most important thing, because once you're aware of it, then you can mentally say stop. The problem is that procrastination, and it's really distraction is what we're talking about in this case, which is a form of procrastination. It creeps up on you. One YouTube video, one Facebook post, oh, I'm just going to check email quickly. And the next thing you know, it's 30 minutes or an hour later. And I think when it's an hour later, when it's 2 hours later, you notice it. The issue for me comes in with all these 10, 15-minute tasks. And those add up.
Like there are things you have to do for 10 or 15 minutes and it just gets your time away from you?
It's the things in between the tasks.
Like what? Like the YouTube video?
You know how you get on a page, you're reading a news article, and you'll see the links at the bottom, and it'll say the 7 foods that are killing you. You're probably eating number 3 right now. And it's link bait, and it activates something in your brain, and you just have to click that. You don't have to, but it kind of feels like you do at the time.
Have you been on weather.com?
No.
Weather.com has the most amazing titles for their videos. It's like, you'll never guess what they found at the bottom of the ocean at the deepest point. And I watched the video, and it's like they found this ore down there in the shape of a ball. And it's like, okay. But the title was like,
No, that's how it is.
really exciting.
Yeah, and that's how procrastination and distraction work together, because we all know what we're getting into. You've seen those podcasts that last maybe a couple hours, and they'll have those great episode notes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, man, I got to find that out. And we see it on the newscast. Or say, a man was killed on a way to kill somebody. News at 11. You just want to tune in, and it's literally like a sentence in a book or a sentence on a podcast or just a few seconds on a television screen.
I want to take a step back, though, because when you reach that point where you need rescue time and you're wondering where your time goes and all of that stuff, I think there's a point before that when there's a symptom of procrastination. And I think the symptom is that you have things you want to do, you have goals, you have tasks that you want to knock out, but they're not getting done. That's the time when you should start looking at, is procrastination, and you're talking about distractions, is that what's causing this to happen? But I think before you have the awareness of what is distracting you, where's my time going from rescue time and all of that, the symptom is you're not getting done what you're supposed to get done. Is that correct?
Exactly. And it's embarrassing, for example, with my situation, when I'm writing a book, when other book authors have done 2 books within that time.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm being distracted on Facebook or YouTube, you get to see it the whole time. It makes it even worse.
It'd be one thing if you look at that and you say, okay, why are these other writers getting 2 books done when I'm still halfway through mine? And you could look at your schedule and your time and rescue time, and you could say, okay, well, I'm working pretty hard on it. Maybe I'm just a slow writer, or maybe I have to do more research. There could be other reasons, but I think you got to go to the root of it. And if it is YouTube or Facebook or email or just putting something off endlessly, that's when you have a problem.
Well, that gets into self-deception, though, doesn't it? Which is a huge issue for entrepreneurs. We make excuses. Well, really not just entrepreneurs, but life.
Mm-hmm.
You say, oh, it's the economy. That's the reason my business isn't doing so well. Or all women are evil. That's the reason I'm not married and nobody wants to be with me. We think maybe we're in a different situation we actually are.
So once you recognize what your procrastination is, that you're doing it, all of those things, I think you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? That would be the next question. So go into that, David. Why are you procrastinating?
On the book?
On anything. Why would you procrastinate?
Well, I'm going to use the book for an example since that's what I'm going through right now. And
Okay.
I think part of that is that I'm not a natural born writer. It's very difficult for me to write. And there's just the...
Sounds like an excuse. Yep.
Maybe so, but it's the path of least resistance for me not to write, because it's like, oh, this is just taking so much energy out of me. But I think when you look deeper into that, usually why a person procrastinates is because you're trying to avoid something. We don't know how to do it. We can't just get in there and do it easily, like with writing for me. So we avoid something because it's not as painful to not do it. And it could be with something like a book or a project or even a podcast that you've got a fear of success and criticism. Anytime you put something out, it opens you up to criticism. And that's very difficult for a lot of people.
Well, especially with a book, when people are reading something so near and dear to your heart that you spent maybe a year, maybe 2 years or more on, and you put it out there, and what if people don't like it? That's a good reason not to put it out, which ends up as procrastination.
Yeah. It's your baby. And this is something we see in all forms of creative media, films. How many bands have you heard of that take 8 years between albums?
I think there are a couple other reasons that people might procrastinate. I think it's not having good planning skills. I talked to an entrepreneur the other day who's trying to get his business going. He gave me about 20 excuses in the 20 minutes I talked to him about why he couldn't do all this stuff. So he had a full-time job, he had a family, he had other things going on, And to me, it was apparent he just didn't have the planning skills to be able to get these work business tasks into his week and into his day. And so he was only able to work maybe 2 to 3 hours per week to grow his business, which is not enough.
But is that procrastinating or is that just lack of planning skills?
I think it's a combination of things. He had some confusion about what do I spend my time on? What is going to pay off for me? And was kind of going down rabbit trails of things that were not going to be as effective to get him to where he wanted to go. I think it was poor planning skills, didn't know how to use his free time or how to schedule in time to work on his business during the week with all these other activities going on. There was just many layers to it for him. So it can be a combination of things for him.
Well, as far as lack of planning skills, I think one of the situations a lot of entrepreneurs get in is that we're used to working without a lot of time. We're used to being out of time. So I think that in that case, not good planning skills actually supports that kind of working environment. I know for me, for example, if I've got to get something done the next day, whether it's an email, maybe it's a read podcast, it's beneficial to me to start at the end of the day, maybe at the very last minute because I'm forced to get it done. And that's where I think the lack of planning skills manifest.
At the same time, at the end of the day, you are forcing yourself. So there is something there that you're not procrastinating until the next day, but you have to reach the absolute end of your deadline to get it done.
Maybe that's lack of willpower, not just planning skills.
Maybe it's a combination. For instance, when I was spending a lot of time last year writing a book, this is how I would do it, is I would wake up in the morning, and that would be the first thing that I did. I would not get on social media. I would not do email. I would sit in my chair all morning. So from the time I got up to about lunchtime or 1 or 2 p.m. And that was how I did it. And for you, you get up and do everything until about, 8 or 9 at night, and then write your book. So there's a big difference there, I see. But we might still be writing the same amount of time during the day. I guess I was writing a few more hours, but we're still both doing it every day. But the way you're doing it has procrastination involved with it.
Have you read any Brian Tracy books ever?
I haven't, but I'm familiar with it.
So Brian Tracy's got a book called Eat That Frog. And the concept is what you're talking about. First things first. What he considers the frog. The worst thing that you have to do, get it done first, eat that frog, and that's the first thing that you do. So that is one method.
Have you ever eaten frog legs? Because they're not bad.
I'm vegetarian.
Well, you weren't in the beginning.
No.
Okay.
That's where I drew the line.
Because they're not that bad.
Something I've noticed when I look at my to-do list is when I have something to do, other stuff gets done. For example, when I'm in the middle of a book project, that's when my office starts getting very, very clean.
That is not true,
For
but
me.
I
For me.
understand the point. So you mean because you have something important to do, you start doing other things that all of a sudden become important, like cleaning your office
that's
or
when
organizing your
office and
bookshelf?
organizing, that's when that sounds really good. There's actually a book on this. John Perry has a book called Art of Procrastination. He says the solution, if you want to take advantage of our tendency to do this, is to come up with fake tasks that seem important but aren't really important and don't have deadlines. We go further and further down our to-do list and some of the important stuff gets done.
Give me an example of fake task. Like, what is this concept here? Because that seems like counterproductive.
Like mow the lawn when it's the middle of winter and the grass isn't growing, maybe. He says that you put those tasks at the top of your list. And because you have a tendency to skip over tasks at the top of the list, you get down to the more important tasks, which are actually lurking at the bottom. Like the book.
Okay, that doesn't really resonate with me, but there you go.
All right, well, if it resonates with you, John Perry is the author. Art of Procrastination is the book.
They always say if you want something done, give it to a busy person because they know how to figure all this stuff out and get everything done. And I agree with that. I think tasks expand to the time that you give them.
Yeah, Parkinson's law.
Yes. But I also say there's no reason to just pile your calendar full of stuff just so you can manage your time better. So I say it depends on the person. It depends on the situation. I had a friend who I was asking her about how building her business was going. she was working part-time and she was building her business the rest of her time. And she told me over coffee one day, she said, I think I really need to go back to full-time so I have less time to work on my business and then I'll be more productive working on it. That made absolutely no sense to me.
It's counterintuitive, but it might work.
It's counterintuitive. She did go back full-time and she's not done anything with her business. So it did not work for her, but I understand the concept. What do you think?
I think that can happen even if you don't have a job. You just have those big things on the list and you wait till the end of the day like I've done with the book. Well, you've got to get this stuff done if you're going to get it done at all. And that is one thing that I'm good at. While I do have a procrastination issue at times, I am very consistent. And when I make up my mind to do something, I use a program called Streaks. It's an app on the phone, basically a calendar. And every time you do something, you tick it off. And my goal is to have a long, consistent streak. Day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. Hundreds of days.
But that makes you, in my opinion, more like feast or famine. Like you're either streaking and you're writing every day and you're feeling good about it, or you're doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I am that way.
So
I think some
where's
people have
the
a
middle
personality
ground?
like that. Well, I don't know that there is a middle ground.
It's
like somebody who does drugs. Have you ever noticed one of those people who does drugs where they're either stone cold sober or they're completely binging on the weekends? They're not like a social user.
Okay, but that's different. That's an addiction. And
I'm saying it's part of personality, though.
Addiction.
It's a personality.
So you're addicted to the streaking.
I'm not addicted to it like somebody's addicted to drugs. I'm saying that I just handle things like a binge drinker. Either I'm,
Okay.
I'm binging
All or
I'm
nothing.
not doing anything. Yeah.
All or nothing.
Yeah. There's no middle ground.
What would it look like for you? We're talking about your book today and not procrastinating on it. What would that look like if you weren't procrastinating? Like if you figured out the procrastination thing, that wasn't an issue, just what do you think that would look like for you?
I'll tell you what it looks like right now is because I'm a binger, the original
all
plan
or
of the
nothing,
book,
we'll
all
say.
or nothing. The original plan of the book was to knock this thing out in about 60 days, but because I procrastinated, it got knocked down to about 50 days. Now, what I've done now, because 50 days is not enough time for me to write a book, is I've extended the deadline. I have bite-sized chunks, and I can actually knock out those bite-sized chunks and see the bigger picture within a longer period. That's what's helping me. And what it looks like is for me to get up, eat that frog in that little bitty chunk, and knowing that if I handle it well, which I do with my streaks, it's going to get done.
So that would be the difference for you, is getting up and doing the book first thing and then dealing with other things?
Exactly. It's utilizing what I do best, which is streaks, but having the chunks smaller so that I'm not forced to write, let's say, 3,000 words a day. I can maybe do 800 words a day.
Mm-hmm.
So just extending the period of time, because I'm good at streaking. I can go for 100 days, 200 days at a time. Where I get in trouble is when I try to do too much in a single day.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about some of the other software or tools that are effective for procrastinators. Do you have any suggestions?
I really like a basic to-do list. The one I use is called Things. I use it on my desktop. I also use it on my iPhone and iPad. More or less, it's just like a list that you would do because you work from a paper list. You write it down, you check it off or cross it out.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing. It's called Things. Simple to-do list that syncs everything up. So if I'm out and something comes up, I can put it on my phone, then it's at my desktop when I get back to the office.
And I want to say that having a to-do list is extremely important. Is you don't know that you're procrastinating or not procrastinating or have any goals if you don't have them written down. So that is the first step before you even look at, am I procrastinating, is what do I want to achieve and what is my timeline to achieve it? And if you don't know those two things, well, you can't dive into procrastination and know if you're getting them done or not. So that is the first step.
Second program I use in conjunction with the to-do list is called Focus Time. This is also an app for the phone. If I'm out, I can use it. Also a desktop application, and it syncs up to let me know how well I'm doing. And Focus Time is more or less just a Pomodoro timer. You let it know how long you want the time to go. I do 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, and do segments like that, what I call a pulse. Work, then relax, work, then relax. So the to-do list and a Pomodoro timer, the one I use is called Focus Time. And it's been very good. $5, $10 well spent. You know, another cool thing, since we're talking about time, rescue time that's telling me where I am spending all my time.
Mm-hmm.
It'll also block out distracting sites. So if you have an issue, say YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, usual suspects, wherever you're spending your time, rescue time will actually block those sites.
See, I have the opposite problem in that I don't like to spend time on social media or watching YouTube videos or anything like that. So is there something like the opposite of rescue time to help me be more social online? Because seriously, what I procrastinate on is Twitter and getting back to people on Facebook and all of those things.
You have it in real life, you mean?
I just do not like doing that stuff. And I'm having to build it into my calendar to say, look, you need to get on Twitter because I don't think I've been on there in months. And I need to get back on there and I need to start interacting with people. And that's something that's a struggle for me. So I kind of have the opposite problem.
Eat that frog. That's your solution.
I made out my plan for the month and I put Twitter to be first on my list 5 days a week because I hate it. And so I have to get up and do it. And then I got up today and you know what? I got straight to writing copy for my website and I didn't do it. So I have to do it. It's ridiculous.
You're too productive. But I think
I'm just too productive.
that puts this episode full circle. Because what distracts one person may not distract another person. And that's a great example, Laurel. To a lot of people, the fact that you sit down and you write copy, you write your book, work on the website, actually do your work, you're neglecting some things that other people may be distracted by, but they're still important.
Well, it shows that a distraction for one person may not be a distraction for another person. And something like Facebook and Twitter, you can use those tools for good. You can use those tools to grow your business. But if you overuse them or if you're spending too much time on them, that's when it becomes a distraction. So just because it's Facebook or Twitter or YouTube doesn't make it a distraction. It's how you use it, how you treat it, how you spend time with it that can turn it into a distraction and can cause procrastination. But it's not the tool itself.
Are you procrastinating by listening to this episode? Well, no fear. This episode is over. If you have questions, you've got comments, reach out to us at redpodcast.com. We have an app, Laurel.
Love the app.
We're on the Apple Store. We're on the Google Play Store. We're on the Amazon App Store, available for both iPhone and Android devices. It's free. Listen to Red Podcast wherever you go. Of course, if you listen via iTunes, subscribe. Leave a review. When you do that, that helps us to come up more frequently in the iTunes search engine. More people can find us, and we can build the real entrepreneur community and help entrepreneurs everywhere procrastinate from doing their work. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.
Exactly. And it's embarrassing if you take my example, for example.